Hello everyone. Hello everyone. I'm so excited. I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for the final test copies of my Journey Oracle deck to come in. I just don't like to do anything with the deck until I got it in hand. Little minor tweaks to do after getting that last, but nothing major. Like I have to be happy with the colors. That's the big thing. And so they just came in today and I am so excited. If you follow me on Instagram, you're probably annoyed with my blowing up of my Instagram feed because I'm so excited. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, I will link my Journey with a Journey Oracle down below because this is just a continuation of that. So I don't want to sort of rewrite history in this video because, I've already done that before. So I will put that link in the description box below. But this all started 2 years ago. It's by the end of February. I think it was 2 years, the end of February. And it's like almost exactly 2 years from the day that I started. I originally started I started actually just sort of mapping out what kind of oracle that I wanted. I started out to paint an oracle deck. But if you watch my channel enough, you know that I don't really I have lots of them and I use them in a certain way, just sort of thematic decks, right? Just so a deck that kind of follows a general theme and it has a lot of random keywords. The cohesiveness comes from the types of the images, or if it's all animals or all goddess or those types of things. But what I really love is when an oracle card or deck has a system. And so I really wanted to get that system in place even before I started painting. So in February, or the end of February, I think Patrick figured out, because he's like our friendship record keeper. I started to really try to nail down what were the suits going to be, what were the cards that were going to be in them, and then I started to paint, and then I just stalled because I just kind of felt like, there's a lot of oracle decks out there. What do I have to say differently? And then it took off into tokens, because I had taught a couple. I had an OM class and a rune class, and I was just really loving, my roots were casting, and so I was really loving sort of being back in the casting. And there's just something that you can do in casting that you can't do with cards. The way that the energy scatters, the way that it clumps on top of each other, that all is a special way of reading. And so I kind of went in that direction for a while. So then when I started casting, everything went into change a little bit again. Some of the things that I had thought of doing, which was having OMs in there, was at one time going to have a lot of different animals and things like that. And then when you start to have a casting system, think about, there's 20 OMs, there's 24. I mean, there could be more in the Anglo-Saxon runes, but there are generally, the Elder Futhark of runes, there's 24. And so, when I had started doing an oracle deck, it was like, going up, well, here's a version of it that was 65 cards, and I'm like, well, you can't really cast 60, then I started that. I drew them all onto little wood pieces to start working with them, and then that started tweaking and solidifying the suits, and started to really solidify what were the actual symbols. And 8 moons was too redundant. I would get too many moons, so I took it down to the 4. 8 seasons was a bit redundant, so I took it down to the 4, but then figured out a way to get the 8 in with those 4. So it just became this process of a journey. It really has been a 2-year journey of not just of really working with the symbols. Like, what are the symbols that are important to me, right? When most people take the time to create a deck, they're creating what is this, perfect synthesis of ideas for themselves. And so I really was, put a lot of work into what are the energies that are at play all around us, and how are those things interacting. That was, that's sort of the basis for the journey system for me, is to really key into what are the energies that are around us, and then how are those energies interacting is the point of doing the reading. whether it's be casting or pulling the cards for it. And so then just, happenstances, that synchronicity comes into play, and I wanted to order a copy of the token so I could, in a prettier form, so that I could, work with them further when I was making everything come together. And so I had a lady laser etch them, and she did D&D related like inspiration dies, and with a D20 on the back, and I was like, that's perfection, because the D20 is actually the platonic shape for water, which is movement and flow and interaction and shifting and changing. It also looks a bit like a web, which is one of the primary symbols of the deck, is that understanding that everything's connected. And so because of that, and also that made the shape a hexagon shape, and the hexagon shape then just took off in my imagination in terms of being able to do spreads, so doing spread shapes and things of that nature. However, what tokens are wonderful for are for casting, but I was so intrigued by the shapes and making spread shapes. And then, of course, some people I had already painted some of the cards before it switched to tokens. And of course, some people are, more visual and really wanted a painted version of it. And so that just sort of sparked things back to, okay, the system stays intact. The system stays what it is. But is there a way for me to do this so that it is expressed in color and movement, and things of that nature? So it's just a different form of the same system. And so then I started rolling back into painting all 45 plus one, as you'll see. And so then that, of course, was its own journey of taking, a system that I have now worked with quite some time, done tons of readings with, and then coming forward to be able to paint that has been so much easier than when I first started to try to paint just a random oracle deck, because now I just have a really tight feeling and connection with the Journey system. And so now I'm just putting into color and movement the system that I already know, which is much more like when I painted my Lenormand deck. It was a system that I knew very, very well, and so all I was doing was expressing that system of Lenormand in color and in motion and in movement, right, and in connection between those colors and those movements. That's what I was doing there, and that's, to me, far easier than just, all right, I'm going to randomly paint a bunch of things and then, name it something. So that's how my brain works, because I'm a Libra brain. So that's kind of the encapsulated mini version. Now, of course, I have, again, a journey with the Journey tokens. I don't want to spend a ton of time on like, how did I get to where I am? But that's kind of the overall processes of everything kind of moving from this and then starting to paint, right? And so some of it was, paintings that I had worked on. Like, for example, this one is actually 2 different tokens. It's the trunk of the tree and the roots of the tree, because it's all encapsulated in that particular painting. This one I'll talk about in a minute, but sometimes it's just the elements. Like, this is water for the 4 elements. The animal tokens was a little bit different, and the crystal token. Some are, that's the earth token. That's the 3rd road. So some are more specific like this, whereas others are color, where the different energy points are very color based, and how is that color moving and expressing itself to the 4 directions, and the way that I work with the 4 directions. How can I express that? I know what that means to me. I've used it in a ton of readings now, but what does that mean to me visually? And so it's just a wonderful exercise of kind of taking things and symbols and stuff that you're already comfortable with, or that and then figuring out, how do you go about expressing those symbols so that they make sense to other people, as well as it perfectly as I can expresses it for myself. So that was it's just such a wonderful thing, right? Which is what people do when they paint tarot, right? So when somebody comes to paint a tarot deck, it's usually the best tarot decks decks come from people who love tarot. They love the system, and now they want to express the system. And there's just something so powerful about that just takes it to another level when you have to one by one take that energy and figure out how are you going to translate that into whatever your particular medium is, whether that's digital work or painting or sketching or whatever that might be. And so the joy for me has been obviously taking my system, which are well-known symbols, they're not anything mind-blowing in terms of symbols, but I pulled it together into this system that really works for me in terms of reading energy. And so being able to take my own system, getting really comfortable with it, and then expressing that in paint has just been that whole nother step, right, in terms of just joy. I mean, today really is just about joy. It's just about seeing something realized, already having seen it, already still loving. Like, to me, the deck does not take away from the system of casting, because that's something separate. You can't, in my opinion, you just cannot replicate casting with cards. It's two different ways of working with a medium. And so in this case, you know, they're just two different expressions of the same system. And so I was able to kind of get that fully realized here, and then now coming full circle back to the painting, and everything sort of nothing. I'm so excited. I'm sorry, I can't even talk. What I love about this is that nothing, this system and this deck for me, and the tokens, the deck, none of it would have be the way that it is today if it hadn't taken the journey that it took. I know I keep using journey, and I'm not trying to be cheesy about it, but it's the word that works, right? If things hadn't gone the way that they went, in the order that they went in, there are so many things that would not exist. The shape, the really condensing and solidifying of the symbols, and how best to get those to work together and to be cohesive, and one thing not overwhelm the other thing. That balance, I guess that's a better term. The balance never probably would have occurred. Not that it wouldn't have been good as it was, but what it is today wouldn't be there if I hadn't put it into symbols. The deck wouldn't look the same if I hadn't worked with this for the time that I did, and really got to know what these things look like to me and interacted with me. The shapes wouldn't be there, right, which is the basis for all of the spreads and the spread shapes that you can plug in different things. None of that would be there if it didn't happen the way that it happened. And you know, because sometimes when I came back around to painting, I'm like, well, I should have just painted it in the first place. It's like, no, because then I never would have had this, and this is like my soul, right? I love the aspect of casting that's there, and I would have never had this had I just painted through the first time. And this would never have looked and felt the same. It wouldn't have been the shape. It wouldn't have had the spreads that can now plug into the shape. None of that would be there if I didn't have that. So it's just this beautiful expression of synchronicity that we as readers, base everything on. So it's really, really, really exciting to me. Clearly, if you hadn't noticed, this would never have come, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, so that's where that spread from. So then it was, of course, painting all the paintings. But if you've ever created a deck, you know that just because you've put that last brushstroke on and done that does not mean that it is done, right? It is done scanning and getting the images to look the way that you need them to look digitally. And then it's like, okay, now getting the symbols. And I tried some, I had a test iteration of some of the cards. I don't even know where I stuck that. I've got things everywhere. I had a test iteration trying to go with, am I going to go with lighter symbols? Am I going to go with darker symbols? The colors turned out amazing, and I was like, okay, I nailed the colors the way that I wanted it, but, how can I get the symbols? I would like those to be whiter and stand out a little bit more. So, that sample deck definitely helped. What helped for me is that I had, at the end of last year of 2019, I had redone my Lenormand deck and had to go through the process of color correcting and all of that kind of stuff for that printer. And so I knew the curve, so I had sort of made a curve layer, I guess is what it would be called. I'm not a huge Photoshop person. I had kind of figured out what worked through this, and so I know, you know, because this, I paint a certain way, I use certain colors, I want a certain vibrancy, so that kind of made things easier for me in terms of color. But there's so much that's involved, like just because you have paintings, does it, you know, there's just so much more that's involved in kind of getting something ready to actually, you know, to print it. As I'm going to move those because I am going to mix those together somehow. So you have to do all that. And then of course it's the guidebook. Now I already have a guidebook for the system, and the system hasn't changed. But what has changed is that there are color images. So so I, you know, just had to go through and just tweak the guidebook. That both come as a PDF that you can just print out. You can use it on your phone or your devices, or you can print it out, or you can have it bound on Lulu. So, you know, just kind of going through and tweaking it for, you know, doesn't have the sections on casting, getting the, you know, colored images put in, which was great to see come into being, and then of course, instead of just having the symbols, actually having the image. I made a huge mistake I did not do this guidebook in InDesign. I did this guidebook in Pages, and it's not really made for this, but it was just something I had on my iPad so I could just sit and work on it. And then I'd done so much work on it, I didn't want to shift it. So then when I started to do the color, I had a choice of either just starting from scratch, which just, you know, just sounded mind-boggling to me, or to try to transfer it over. And so instead I was just use this. Nothing's changed, you know, everything is the same. I've just swapped out obviously the color, and then there is a small little piece on, of course, why I ended up painting it the way I did. And so of course and then the little front piece, because there's no color in the tokens, but there is in the deck. So anyway, so there's just a lot that comes involved, and so when everything just sort of coalesces together, it's really exciting. So I had also decided I had wanted a mini. I know a couple people had asked, because I had put out my Lenormand as a mini, was I going to do a mini in the Journey Oracle deck? And I'm like, yes, I would love that. But then I was like, okay, do I want text? Do I not want text? And I've determined there will be text in it, which is on one of these cards. But yeah, and then the other thing was how I was going to put it, you know, whether I was going to put it in a box. I will say that I didn't find I didn't like the way that the hexagon shaped cards. So the cards are shaped like a hexagon, like they are, you know, just like the tokens were. I wanted that. I truthfully, that was one of the things that when I saw that I could print in a hexagon, then I was like, okay, now I'm sold on painting it, because I would never have made this deck in a normal, just a oracle shape, because the whole system kind of interlocks with the hexagon. So I just wouldn't have done it. So there's just, again, all these little pieces that would have had to fall together. But I don't like in a tuck box, I don't like the way that the trying to get the cards back in and they rotate. I just didn't, it was very fiddly. So I didn't really like that. The mini one could not, this is again happenstance, right? The mini one I could not get a box for, or a tuck box for it, and so that had to go in a bag. And so then it was again, okay, well, the tokens are in a bag, this is going to be in a bag, that's fine. It's that, again, that cohesiveness that comes through out of necessity of, okay, this is the way we're rolling. So I love that kind of stuff. This isn't the final bag. I'm kind of going through some bags. I think this is the final bag, but anyways, and that also let me keep my journey token. So, you know, when you get my journey token set, there's a token with my tree on it, and it's on the thing, and that just allows me to continue that through to this iteration of it as well. So that makes my heart happy. Like, there's just so many little things, right, that makes my heart happy. Again, here are the backs, which are, of course, I will be edging this right after this video, but I wanted to obviously go through the cards as they would come before I go through and put the edging on it. I think I'm probably going to just do brown. Of course, I could do, I'll maybe do the other ones in the matte gold, but I think that I want to keep this earthy and brown, so most likely I will be doing that, the edges brown, and see how that ends up looking. I'll show that to you at the end of the video. You know, I'll pause it and do that, and then kind of come back and show it to you. So so yeah, let me zoom in here. Again, I'm so thrilled with, it's the same cardstock of the my new Lenormand deck. It's a linen cardstock. It is a playing cardstock, which I love because I love to riffle shuffle. It has the black core, which is to help not being see-through, which is great for playing cards, obviously, in terms of not being able to see what somebody's holding, but it also really helps with color vibrancy. And I have to say, that has definitely been the case. Like, the colors are spot on to how I want the colors, wanted the colors to be, so I'm thrilled with that. So it has the symbol, which is the exact symbol, and I even made it so that, because I work with things together, and so I will definitely be working with the symbols together with the cards, and so I made it the size so that you could place a symbol on top of it and cover that in case you want to stack some things and work with these together. There's some ways that I plan on working with these together, so I wanted that symbol to be about that I could cover it with a journey token, which is what they are. So you have the symbol, because that is the main thing of the system, is the symbol. I wanted that to be front and center. I didn't want that to fade off. I really just wanted that to be, that's the important part. And then we have the name of the symbol, what the symbol is, and a keyword. And this is just a single keyword that keys me into it, and keys, you know, that basic just kind of key in. Obviously there's more written in the guidebook, but also the point is that there is what the web might mean to me. You're going to have a lot of different nuances too as well, so it's just kind of enough to key you into the symbol. So here we have the first one, which is web for connection. Of course, this is the heart and soul of the deck, right? The first three cards are actually really important to understanding what the deck means, like what is the purpose of the system, what is it really does key into the overarching theme of the deck. And the web is that understanding that everything is connected. Energy is connected. Energy doesn't sit in nice neat piles. It's interchanging, it's overlapping, it's making connections, and so that is the basis, the idea of the web as this energetic thing that connects us across space, across time, high and low, that sits under the roots of the tree for me, is what binds everything to do with the system together. So that, of course, is number one, and that is part of course, the first system, or the first suit. Then we have the third road. This is actually, again, a long-running concept for me. This is probably the only symbol that would be tailored for me and tailored for this system. Maybe the very last one as well, but the concept of the third road comes from fairy tales. It actually comes from a poem that I collected from early adulthood on various versions of Thomas the Rhymer, and he talks about how there are three roads. There's the broad road that some think is going to heaven, but it's actually going to hell. There's the narrow, difficult road that is actually going to heaven, but there is actually a third road, right? And that's the road to fairyland. It's the road to that liminal space. It's that space between. It's maybe you have this option and you're going to choose to go a different direction than those two options, right? So that's very something, walking the edges, walking the liminal space is very key to my own personal path. And so of course that has to be in there. So that's the third road. And it very much talks about energy and the movement of energy. And so that is one of the, again, three important cards that define the system to me. And the last one is the crossroad, the idea of choice. While we do have energy all around us and it's interacting with us in positive ways and not so positive ways, we're connected to people in positive ways and not so positive ways, we have, the only thing that we have control over is our choices. It's the Two of Swords. It's the idea that of that crossroads moment. Moment by moment, we make decisions over and over again. We stand at the crossroads and we make choices. And that choice is determined and impacted by our past. And that choice is what drives our future as well. And so there's, you know, not much more important to me than the concept of choice and taking responsibility for our choices. And that there are other people making choices that impact us, but in the end, we only have control of our own choices. So that, of course, had to be there. So those three cards, again, really speak to the core concepts behind the whole system. Then we get into the rest of the journey suit is that understanding of orienting ourselves, that we are on this journey and that we are constantly needing to orient ourselves for different ways. And so, of course, in a concept that is very important to me is the upper world, middle world, and lower world of the tree. The tree of life, the world tree is again, a key concept for me. And so the upper world, we are up in those branches where we're getting clarity, we're getting messages from the upper world, is super important. Those are the top branches of the tree. We have the middle world, the trunk of the tree, where we sit with our back up against the tree. We can travel up, we can journey down into the roots. It is the middle world where we live out our daily lives. The lower world, of course, is down in the roots of the tree. And for me, this is the access to the web. This is access to ancestral energy. This is access even to animal spirit energy, although some of that can be up in the branches of the tree as well. But so we, of course, I had to have those three orientings on the journey. And then, of course, the rest of it would be the 4 directions. And this was one of the difficult ones for me to figure out how I would express that, the directions, because it is really tied with the movement of the sun throughout the day. Whereas the seasons are the movement of the sun throughout the year, we have the movement of the sun throughout the day as well. And for me, this is really orienting ourselves in our story. So we start in the east, the sun rises in the east, and that is the start of the story. The south is actually where everything occurs. It's that middle. So what I did is I took a sort of a desert silhouette is what I was doing, and kind of marking the passage of the sun. This is the sunrise in the east. The south, for me, represents that middle part of the story. This is where we meet challenges. This is where we meet people who are going to help us and aid us. It's the middle of the story. There's so much, the energy is so flexible in the middle of the story. The potential is all here in the start. The flexibility and the way in which things can happen, both positively and negatively, take place in the middle of the story. As the sun sets, we come to the ending of the story. The energy is tightening up. It's wrapping up. Here we're kind of coming to conclusions, coming to an ending with the sun setting. And then finally the north is actually, for me, the idea of nighttime here. Now the sun is still there, but it is now behind the moon, right? It's reflecting in the moon, but the sun is still there in the north. And now this is when the energy is pretty set, and we now can kind of think back. It's the epilogue. It's thinking back on the situation and on the journey, and what can we have learned from that. So those, of course, are that encompasses the suit of the journey. It's how are we orienting ourselves on this particular journey. So I'm going to just kind of stick these in a pile for that suit. The next suit that we come out then with is, or that I came out with then, is of course with the elements, because elemental energy for me is so important. It embodies everything for me. Every part of my practice touches on the elements. So we have the element of spirit or source. This to me doesn't have a lot of form. It really is where all of the four elements come out of. It is in everything. It's in all the elements. It's in us. It's in everything living. It's sort of indefinable, is how I see that. Just that bright light spark of that something special, that spirit that animates everything. So I really did wanted that to be quite indefined. And so we have spirit, and then of course we have the four elements themselves of fire, which is creative and transformative, air, which is to do with our intellect, and it is, you can see one of the things that I have to change is there are little corners that didn't get covered. I already fixed it actually. I was so thrilled that that was the only thing I had to fix, and that it was my mistake, because I was a little worried. I thought, oh great, if the bleed isn't going to stay true, that's going to be a problem. But no, it was my my error, and so I've already fixed those. That's the only thing that I really have to fix in the deck, which is fantastic. So it's set to go. We have air for intellect. We have water for emotion, feelings. It's also intuition is there as well. And we have earth, which is the physical world, of course, that the mountains, that's grounding physicality of life. So we have the 4 or 5 elements plus the 5th element of spirit or source. But then we also have how, of course, this is a major part of my practice as well, the understanding of active and receptive energy and the way that those work and interact. And of course, all of the elements can be both active and receptive. While traditionally air and fire, of course, are active, masculine yang energies, and water and earth are receptive yin energies. In truth, they can all have aspects. We have the swampy still water, and then we have a raging waterfalls that can be seen as active energy. But this lets us cue into a reading on how is the energy moving. We can get other cues, but when these show up, they really give us that idea of active movement and receptive stillness. So those are energy, the 5 elements, and how those elements can move. So those are obviously really important. And then we have the energy suit. It's a suit of energy. And so while the 4 elements or the 5 elements with the movement are a lot of times more orienting us on outside element. How is energy moving around us and through us? Because it does interact with us. We contain the 4 elements, right? But the energetic points, this is also a thing that my friend Patrick begged for to make sure, because he does work with the energy points. You would see this in terms of chakra points. There are other ways that can be associated with it. I also associate it with the cauldrons, the 3 cauldrons in Celtic worldview as well, which I talk a little bit about in the guidebook. But so that was important for him and for the energy points to be related to those traditional colors, because it does work that way. So we have a grounding point here for security. We have the passion for and the need for balancing that passion. This is actually the symbol prayer in geomancy, and it has that kind of teenage boy, that sort of bouncing off the wall energy about it. And energy can be passionate, energy can be amazing, but it can also be kind of disruptive, and needing to kind of have that there, but have that imbalance is really important. We have the will energy point for confidence is the key word. We have this for me is a serenity card. And I talk about this in the guidebook because when I was doing research on, the energy points and things of that nature, I read this most amazing quote. Let me see if I can, but I don't think it was a quote, but it was a description of what people in terms of chakras would call the heart chakra. But it talks about how the name in Sanskrit means unhurt, unstruck, and unbeaten. And it really is this idea of peace and a serenity, more so than just about heart or love or that type of thing, which we often see it there. Not that that's not a part of that, but that really struck me, this idea, and I love the word, the concept of serenity. So we have serenity and heart. We have voice and truth. And again, you'll recognize the colors as fairly traditional to the energy points. Intuition with wisdom. And then we have the guidance card for the higher consciousness. Now, I wanted to make sure in the energy suit that we understood that energy can be disrupted, and that there are ways in which to get that without having these particular cards, but they were, or symbols, because it started as symbols, but they were important to me. One of them is disruptive energy. It's not necessarily negative, it's just disruptive. It's shaking things up. We have a blockage where that energy is going forward and it literally hits a wall. You have that obstacle energy there. You have the idea of repelling, something that bounces off. That's different than just hitting and stopping short. The energy is still in motion. It's just been redirected in a different way. Again, sometimes that's positive, sometimes that's not so positive. We have the idea of energy being hidden or unseen. Just because it's not in play doesn't mean that it's not there. And then I, of course, had to have a symbol for abdication, and the understanding that we needed to take responsibility, that we can't just give over our energy. We can give over our energy to somebody or a situation, but we need to take responsibility and take that energy back when we do that. I mean, sometimes it's okay to do for a little while, but we don't want to stay there. So this would be very reflective of the Devil card and how I read the Devil card. That's an important card for me. It's important energy, and I certainly wanted that to be reflected. So that comprises of the energy. So we had the journey suit, the elemental suit, and the energetic suit. And then we go into the cycles, because life is about cycles, right? Everything about life is about cycles, and it's so important to me. It's important to the way that I would read energy. So of course the idea of day and night just represents cycles in that just sense that everything is moving, everything is always shifting and changing. And then we have some symbols that represent the different cycles, such as the 4 seasons. Now I work with the seasons as 8 seasons. Of course, we have the main solstices and equinoxes, but we also have the cross quarters, and those energies are different. If you live in a seasonal place as I do, the beginning of fall and harvesting and things is very different than the second half of fall, where things are dropping away. And there's ways to work with that. With tokens, if it is face down, it is a season, but it's the second half. If it's face up, for me, it is the first half of the season. You can flip a coin on it. With cards, you can have how they come up in terms of rotation, whether they're upright or spun down. There's just many different ways that you can tap into which one of those there are. But I found when I had 8 seasons and even the 8 moons, that those started to kind of overpower the pulls. And so that's why I condensed them into their 4 parts, but still left the understanding that those things exist expanded. So we of course have winter, and these symbols are actually from an old almanac, and they are the symbols for the 4 seasons. So we have winter, we have spring, we have summer. Some of these ones, if you watched me when I first started to do my oracle deck, you will recognize these as some of the first ones that I painted. Then we have autumn. And so on these cards, most have 1 keyword, but on these cards, it's 2. There's the first part, harvest, and the second part, clear. Then, of course, that's the cycle of the moon through the year. This is the cycles of day and night. And then we have the moons are important. Now, in my tokens, it was pretty easy to have a symbol for the new moon and the full moon. One is totally carved out, and so it looks like a dark moon, and then one is not. It just has the outline, and so it was very much clearly the full moon. If I fill this in, it looks like a full moon. So it was like one of those things. I wanted to keep the symbols intact. But instead the new moon has the black, is the only one with a black symbol, because that is the dark moon, right? So we have the new moon, and then of course we want the building. We have the waxing moon where the energy, the waves are just starting to build up, moving all the way up until the full moon energy, where things are fully manifesting, and then of course the dying down with the waning, and things are releasing and relaxing down as well. There you can see a white corner that has again already been fixed. Then there is the cycles of adult becoming, I guess is what you would say. It's the cycles of the human development, how we move, and we, of course, I don't consider these to be just the, okay, you're born, you have that conception, you have childhood, you have adulthood, you have elder state as well, but we move in and out of those as well. And that was like, okay, well, how do I represent that? The symbols are created off of a birth chart. If you look at this, this is a birth chart cut into quadrants. The first quadrant is that sort of beginning spark of conception, the development quadrant of childhood, the achievement quadrant of adulthood, and the maturity quadrant of that sort of wisdom and elder stage. So that's how I did the symbols, but when I was going to paint them out, I didn't want people and I went through a lot of different ideas of how I was going to do it, but I ended up, I was going to do actually an oracle deck just based on the progression of numbers. And so one of the suits started with just the beginning of a web, a spider coming down, and of course the main concept in this deck is the web. And so I thought, oh, that's perfect. So we have in the background here, and you can also see this is a very close-up. It's as if this tree is in the same location, and the 4 seasons are softened and just in light mode behind it, because we have those 4 seasons changing with the changing of the growth and the maturity. So we have the spark here with the spider just starting. The child development is starting to build its, making its foundations there. We have the adult stage of achievement. Okay, we've got a web here. It's here. It's in motion here. But then the maturity, where we have this beautiful balanced web that's probably done over and over in that lifetime, and sort of learned some lessons about how to make the perfect web. And so we have the only thing changing in the images is just the seasons in the background and the web growing. So that's the cycle of that. So that is the suit of cycles. And then the last suit, we'll put this card aside for a moment. The last suit just has 3 cards. It can be read just that way. The symbols are the exact same way, of course. You can just pull the animal symbol, and it is about spirit support, animal spirit. The plant card is about physical support, or the plant symbol. And the spinning crystal is about soul support. So you have spirit, body, spirit, and soul support. And so when these comes up, you can just read them as that. However, if you're someone who's worked with my journey system, you know that in the course of making the tokens and the shape of it and all of that happened, it got connected with the energy of rolling a dice and the D20, and lots of people have done lots of, I'm sorry, I'm trying to grab a dice out of here because who knows where I stuck one. Here's one in here. Here we go. And so you can choose to, when this token comes up and or when the card comes up, there's actually a chart in the back, and there an extra chart or 2, I think, going to be in the other one as well. But this is the chart. So if it's a D20, so there are 20 animals, 20 plants, and 20 crystals, as well as a blank page for you to fill your own in, right? We always do those animal things, and then we're like, oh, it's not got the animal I want. Well, you can swap in what you want, make yours entirely the way that you want it, and so that if you were to pull the symbol for animal, you could then roll a D20, which always comes, you know, with it, because not everybody like me has D20s laying around, and you would go, so that's animal, you would go to the second one, and so that is for this animal, it's reptile. There are insect, reptile, land animal, water animal, and air animals in each of the 4 elements. So this is the element of fire, and it is the reptile, snake, and the keyword for shedding, and that will just give you some extra information. Some people just stay with the spirit support and tap into their own animal energy, and some people pull, like I have definitely pulled from an animal deck. You can do that as well. There's a lot of ways to work with this to expand, so then all of a sudden the deck becomes very customizable for each person, which is something that I love about this a lot. And so that is with the animal, which is the spirit support, the plant, which is the physical support, and the soul support of crystals. So this is the nature suit. It's only 3 cards, but it is actually has 60 cards plus. And there's other ways, which I'll do other videos on, but there's other ways, like I have a chart for if you get the branches of the tree, you can roll a d20 and you can get an OM, pull an OM that way, or if you have a set of OMs, you get the branches, pull out an extra OM to expand on that. Okay, it's guidance. Well, what kind of guidance? Or if you get the web card or the roots card, depending on how you would see that, would want to see that, you could then pull a rune for that, either out of a rune deck or out of your the runes that you have. So that there's many ways to take things and expand it. That came out of, again, that happenstance of having a D20 and thinking, oh wow, what can I do with a D20? I love dice. And so that's been a fantastic component there. So this is the exact same, let me scroll back out here. This is the exact same as the Journey token system of tokens. These are the same exact suits and the same exact symbols. My friend Patrick, he's responsible for making me do the energy points. I mean, I was going to have energy points, but they might have looked a little bit differently, but I think this works. Again, it keeps it open enough for people who work things differently, but it also allows you to sink into those chakra points if that's something that you work with. So it was a good call. But when I was done, I had literally done the last painting, and we were like, yes, I've done the last painting. And then he's like, well, you know, one of my favorite paintings you didn't use. And he's like, is there any way that this painting, which is a painting that I did to represent the song Blackbird, and he said, could that be the spirit one? I was like, no, for me the spirit's got to be pretty indistinct for me personally, but it could be the omen card. Now the omen word, I love the word omen, but it does have a bit of a heavier connotation, so we ended up calling it signs. And so this is an extra card that comes in the deck, and the concept here is to remind us when this card comes up that while we have all these signs and symbols on the table, these are all out in nature, right? Have your discernment open. Be watching for a bird taking off in flight or landing next to you. Be observing the clouds, observing clusters of flowers, spots of colors that come out. It's a reminder to look up and to really see and use discernment, because there are messages everywhere. And so that's kind of a little extra for the deck. And then of course I had to make a token with that. So this is the bird, of course, that is on that I painted onto this painting, and this is going to come with in the course of the pre-order, just as a little bonus for people who just are using the cards. But of course, other people might have the actual token set and can actually put it in. They don't have to, but they could put it into their set. So that's kind of the little piece of extra that this iteration of the system kind of brought into being. So that's the system. Again, I'm so pleased. There's nothing I really have to fix. The colors exactly how I want. There's just those couple corners that I just had to shove everything over correctly. And there's just so many ways. I'll be doing more videos. There's so many ways to work with this, with the journey tokens, or to work with the shape, because as they come up, you can use reversals if you want, but you can also use directions. You know, if a symbol is coming up like this, is it pulling, or is it coming like this? Maybe that energy is pushing energy. You can start to get a lot of nuances, which you can do with the tokens as well, just due to the shape. Miss Veronica Jude, who is the queen of the sort of doing these types of directional things, she was really, first she thought they were squares, and she's like, I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, they're not squares, they're hexagons. And then she was like, oh, that's just as good. You know, she was excited about, because you can, there's a lot of nuances that you can do. I have not tried to riffle shuffle with the whole deck because I was keeping things in order. But you can, they actually riffle shuffle quite well. I obviously would recommend not riffle shuffling by the points. I would definitely, you know, get them flattened out and riffle shuffle off the flattened edges. But it's great cardstock for riffle shuffling, so you get a very good blend, which is important to me. Now, of course, you can throw these all on the table and do a nice big wash as well. Some people love to do washes, and you can certainly do that. So of course, I'm not going to go into lots of, in terms of spreads and things. If you work with the tokens, you know, I think of these in terms of shapes, and then you can plug certain things into those shapes. I know I've talked too long. But for example, you can do a honeycomb shape, because obviously these are perfectly done for shapes. These probably would work better on a cloth surface, but here you have it. And these can be many things. Like this could be the this can be I think I give different examples of how you can do this as an elemental suit. This is kind of how I would do the elements. So this would be the 5 elements. The source spirit is in the middle, what's at the core of things, and then I have the and you can of course lay these as they come up. I put everything upright even when I do my tokens, but that you can do the 4 elements. So for me, that would be fire, air, water, and earth. And then you can have as above, so below, or you can do that. What is the active energy at play? What is the receptive energy at play? And sort of do your reading off of that. But the shape of it lends itself to plugging in a lot of different things. There's great ways if you just have the 4 together like that. Again, you take that shape, and then this would be a 4 direction spread or a story spread, and that makes a really great way to read it. I love the garden path if you want to do something more linear. Well, let's pull some different cards up so we can see more of the cards, right? So you can then put them as if they were stepping stones, right? And do a stepping stone spread, which for me would be like a get there spread, where you could lay 5, you could lay 7 with the 1 and that being the before and after, or be nice and linear. This is where I am. This is where I want to get to. How do I do that in between? That's something I do a lot with Lenormand and Kipper, and works really well with this as well. I like to do 3 cauldron spreads. You can of course stack them as the 3 cauldrons. It's just the shape of them lends itself to a lot of play. And then again, there I use them as well, like on my spread cloth, because I've had the sample ones, and then I have some that are just printed out on paper as well. But you can, you know, I'm a big fan of pulling something as the sort of central message and then casting on top of it, whether that's with a set of oghams, whether that's with a set of runes. So you might pull, you know, like a central message, pull out some runes, pull out some oghams, pull out your journey tokens, and whoa, and get really excited and cast them right off the table, and then you would do your casting. Generally, I do this on a casting cloth. So for example, you know, I showed this in a video already, but for example, I have to remember to get that. I do not want it. She's pretty good about cards now, but she will chew wood. She chewed one of my rune sets. But I generally, you know, will use it like with this, or with the elemental casting, or with my one main casting cloth that I have as well, with all the different things on it. But you can pull, drop your thing in the middle. And this can be any oracle cards. This is a great way to cast. I have the door one that I use, 3, so I just have one on the floor. I just have to remember that I have one on the floor. You know, shake, 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 shake. Do your casting, and then that was sad because I didn't want it to jump off. But then you have your 4 quadrants, and you do your reading with this center card being sort of that core main issue that's at hand, and what you're reading for, a main thing to read around. This is one way I love to cast. You can also, again, make them so that you know, build, say, well, I guess I'll leave that there. Or you can even do 4. Like I like square, if you have square oracle cards, I like to do a 4 square, and then cast on top of the 4 square, right? And so I love to do that, and this is something else that you can do. So you make you might make and then pull, you know, a bunch of charms. Maybe just, you know, get in there, shake, shake, shake them up, grab a handful and cast. And so then where things land, those provide placements as well. I love to, again, I usually use what I've used in the past for that has generally been square cards, but of course now I'll be able to use these to do that. So you know, those are kind of the concept, or the videos for another day, but I just really wanted to come on today because I was so excited to get these, and to kind of get that, you know, okay, the colors are perfection, everything's turned out the way I want it, couple tweaks here, bam, ready to go. And I kind of just wanted to celebrate that for a minute. So I'm going to go edge these and bring it back so that you can see them edged. You could certainly do a colorful edging on, but it's very earthy back, kind of to remind us of the wood token backs. It's got that overlay of the D20, but then the roots underneath it. So I think I'm going to go with brown, at least on this deck. Obviously I can try different things as well. So I'm so thrilled. These will be going up for pre-order. I don't have that date. Like if you watch my Facebook, or you go to my website, you can sign up for notifications, and I will definitely be sending out. It will be on my Instagram, it will be on my Facebook page when it actually starts, probably within the next week. Or on my website, there is a page for this that you can look. But if you sign up for notifications, you'll get an email announcing that it's opened up and everything like that. So that will be coming. But today was just about, yay, full circle. Some of you have been with me since that very first painting, which is probably one of the seasonal cards, I would guess. I'll have to look back on a couple of the videos, but I would guess it's one of the season cards that were the first paintings. So a lot of you, you know, were there from the very beginning, and it's just all kind of come full circle. And so I'm excited to share this with you. But oh my goodness, this is my favorite thing, and I got sidetracked, and I haven't even done these yet. But I wanted to talk about the mini deck. Somebody, and I'm so sorry, please leave a comment who was the first, although I had a couple people say, are you going to do a mini version? Because I had just put out the mini of the Lenormand, and I love the mini version. This is like my heart and soul. This just has another dice in there for me, obviously. let's just zoom in here for a minute. I love little things. I love mini things. This is, so you can kind of see, in terms of size, I know I said I was gone and I wasn't, but you know, that's me. You should not be surprised about that. Size-wise, if you look, so this is a mini poker, US poker, and it's definitely shorter. Let's see how I can, it's definitely shorter than that, but of course this, it's wider, it sticks out. So that's a mini, oh goodness. That is a mini card, Lenormand deck, and my mini Lenormand deck, and a mini of the, of course the sizes and stuff will all be put on my website, the exact sizes. How cute is that? Oh, it just feeds my soul. Now, most of these cards are, all of them except for this one, are blank, because my intention was to have them be blank. But I decided, I'm so glad that this one I messed up and put the title on here, because I really love it a lot. It looks amazing. And the fact of the matter is the point of this mini deck is to be portable, to be able to literally throw it into this little bag, throw it in your bag and go. And that is the time in which you will least likely have a guidebook at hand. And so while for me it doesn't make any difference because I know my symbols so well, you know, I think that it is handy for most people to have. I know there'll be some people who would prefer this, but I think by and large it's just going to be most useful as a mini oracle deck to have those on there. And so I have determined, I'm not going to be swayed, that those will have the keywords on it just as you see it here. And I can read it, you know, my eyesight, I can read it without glasses. It's very similar to size of the mini Lenormand font as well. So they'll all have that on there. But how stinking cute is this? I mean, I am a huge fan of mini things. I just love it so much. So it just, oh, you know, I shuffled it really well there, but that's okay. I've been playing with these, so these are all shuffled out. So yeah, so this is obviously, here is the regular size, and that is a mini. The regular size is just a little bit shorter. This is a US poker card. It's just a little bit shorter than that, and of course it's wider, at least the points are wider. In terms of a regular, you know, whatever, a regular tarot deck, this is a pretty standard, I guess, tarot deck. It is, again, you know, shorter and wider. Now, this is, again, I would say just more of a standard size versus, you know, a larger size cards that we can get nowadays. But so that just kind of gives you an idea of size. But, you know, if you think, if you have, let's see, I got too much stuff on the table, right? So that, next to that, and an adorable mini, right next to a cute little mini Lenormand, and I'm probably totally out of screen here, but yeah, so that's the sizes. And again, both of them will have the title and the keyword. Let me put this back and this back. Beautiful bag made by the amazing Bobby. I'm assuming she still does art. This is art that she does here. So yes, I totally forgot to mention this because I got sidetracked saying, okay, I'm going to go and do that. So yeah, there are, again, two sizes. Sizes will be on the you know, when things go out, but these I'm thrilled with. Like, this just makes my heart sing. I've got pictures of it. You can tableau it out. I have a picture on my Instagram of putting the whole tableau out, which you can do. I can do on my reading space with. I'll leave that one in there. Actually, I think I had the little blue one in there. That, you know, I can tableau it all out in a 9. I think it's a 9x5. Yeah, I think it's a 9x5. Anyways, so yeah, that there is a mini there, and I'm so excited about that. Let's put its little token in there for good luck. And now I will come back after I put the edging on this one. Okay, it's the next day and it's kind of sunny, but I went ahead and got the Got it all edged. Let me try to put it flat so you can see it. I love it. It's, to me, it's perfect. It's the perfect color of some of these darker bits that are in the back. So I think that it goes really well. Obviously the front is full of all the color of the world, but I think it looks really good. I'm quite happy with that. And again, that is the La Plume. Now the La Plume, I believe, is more dye-based than water-based. Tombos are more water-based. And it's number 18 dark brown. So there we have it. Again, I will be doing another video, just like me doing some sample readings and things like that. But that's kind of the what I wanted to accomplish in this video. Again, it's just exciting to have like the whole deck in my hand, and you know, and just have that sense of full circle. So thank you very much for, if you've made it this far, thank you very much, and I hope that you've enjoyed this in some way, even just in terms of the kind of seeing the process of going from an idea, which really, you know, was the idea, to trying to paint the things out, different iterations of it, and then kind of culminating it into, in this case, two versions of the same thing. You know, it's just, I think it's kind of interesting to think about those things, and to see how does that kind of come into being. So hopefully that was of interest, and I hope you have a wonderful day.